Hi, I'm here to discuss my final project for Anita's class. It is on worms. This is based off the terrarium habitat unit that second graders do for their science credit. And my small portion that I did my lesson on is worms. So I would probably start my lesson with doing a KWL chart on what my students already know about worms. This way I can get prior knowledge to either adjust areas throughout the worm unit or make sure I add certain areas to the worm unit regarding what they already know and then what they want to know. After the KWL chart, I would dive right into worm observation, and students will be working in groups of 2. I haven't decided. I would either do a early ESL learners working together or combine it with early and intermediate, because those are my 2 ESL learners that I would be working with throughout this unit. And then they would be sitting in a group of 4 per table. They would each have 1 worm to share between each pair. And I really just for the first like 10-20 minutes of the 10 minutes of the lesson would have them write down what they like on scratch paper, what they noticed about the worm, like the color, the slimy. Prior to them handling worms, we would actually go over how to properly handle a live animal. Forgot to mention that, but you would see that in my outline. And instead of using scratch paper, they would actually be using a tree map that they would further use throughout this unit for the lesson following. So worm observation, recording of like what, instead of have, it would be what they notice, what they see, and then this middle part would be body parts, and then this final part would be predictions. So it would be what they see, body parts, and predictions, because we would go over that throughout the entire like worm unit and observation. And by the end of this unit, they would eventually make predictions on how they think, based on their observations and watching the worms move, how the worm would help the soil and the terrariums that we already created prior to this lesson. Second lesson would be diving deeper. I would read a book about how worms move called Wiggle Wiggle Worm, and this is just a children's book about pretty much the basics of what worms do and how they help soil and help the planet breathe by building tunnels. They help water get to plants by creating these tunnels. We would continue going over body parts because at this point I really want them to be able to write down 2 body parts on their own, and that would be the basis for lesson 2, is like actually understanding and knowing how worms help the planet and the body parts to a worm. The third lesson is just a writing from a perspective of our worms that are now living in our terrariums. I would start this lesson off by reading Diary of a Worm. Everyone knows that and loves it, long time. And after that, we would just use sentence strips to help start the beginning structure of the writing portion. A lot of my beginner students, that's okay, go ahead and just walk right through one. Go ahead. A lot of my beginning ESL students would need sentence frames to help create actual sentences. I would have a requirement of about 5 sentences to complete the diary project. And my intermediate, I would already expect them to be able to combine 2 subjects about their worms from the list that we already created with the tree map using based on the diary of the worm. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. Not so great and explained, but if you look at my actual lesson from this website, you will see the amazingness of worms and how mighty they can be. The end.